All right, it's about 6 after. You guys want to get started, or you want to wait a couple more minutes?
I'm fine to go ahead and get started if you guys are.
Yeah, I think it's good.
All right, cool. Well, I'll kick it off with a round of intros. Start with myself, and I'll kind of pass the baton around. This is Royal Remy, formerly Remy Racing. He's kind of an avid NFT investor, kind of play around in the space a good bit. I got started with Zed back in February, and just kind of gotten into a little bit of everything, good and bad so far, and I think this is one of the good ones. So grateful to Aaron and Brian for coming to join us. Gonna go next, CG.
Yeah, I'm ZG. Can call me Adam as well. That's my real name. But I run the website Zed Gazette and help support Zed Run through community participation kind of stuff. I'm a traditional blockchain investor for the last 10 years. Started off in the Silk Road, and just kind of building my knowledge since then. And Zed got kind of weird when everyone showed up, and I never thought I would be talking this much about blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs as I do now. But I appreciate Remy. You let me co-host, and I'm excited to talk about some unicorns.
Hell yeah. Okay, I guess I'll go next since I'm next in line. My name's Brian Akaka. I'm the head of marketing at Laguna Games. My background in crypto's not as long as you guys. I've been in it since about 2017. And I have also been involved with video games, mobile games, since about 2007, 2008. So I kind of come from a background of gaming as well as a little bit of crypto.
All right, I guess I'm next. Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Beyerschmidt. I'm one of the co-founders of Laguna Games. I've been a long-time software entrepreneur with 7 of the 11 years in gaming, mostly in mobile, like Brian.
Awesome.
All right. I think I'm next then. This is Eric Wong. I started with NFT gaming with Zed Run back in May. Have been quite active in Zed Run, but recently I've kind of looked at other NFT games like Axie Infinity, Riot Racers, as well as The Red Village. So I look at NFT games as a form of entertainment and as well as investment, and I maintain a very strict ratio of 10% game and 90% investment. So hopefully be able to learn from the folks on stage today, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
All right, MJ. Last but not least.
Is he up as a speaker? It just says it. Yeah.
Never mind. I dropped the ball on that one.
You can edit that out.
All right. Well, I've invited him up. We'll let him introduce himself once he comes up, but maybe we can go ahead and get started. Brian, Aaron, do you guys want to just maybe start with just a general overview of what Crypto Unicorns is and
Sure.
where? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give everybody kind of the quick elevator pitch, and then we can kind of expand from there if people have questions. So Crypto Unicorns is a game that leverages blockchain-based assets, including both fungible and non-fungible tokens. The two kind of primary NFTs being unicorns and land. So unicorns kind of start their life cycle as eggs, hatch into babies, and can be evolved into adults. And there are many use cases for unicorns, the primary one being tied directly to our land gameplay, which is a farming simulation. So first and foremost, you can put your unicorns to work on your land, and they help boost the efficiency and increase the productive output of berries and boosters and various crafted items that you can generate off of the land. And then beyond that, you can kind of take higher stat unicorns off the farm to do fun things. And so far we've announced, 3 battle loops. The first being jousting, because they're unicorns, they have horns, and it's hilarious. The second being racing, and the third being a team RPG, all of which will be launching over the course of next year. That just about kind of sums up our current, currently announced roadmap and really represents our initial plan to bootstrap this player-owned economy and IP known as crypto unicorns.
Awesome. Well, I think myself and ZG have spent a decent amount of time going through the white paper, and I'm sure I think we've got a ton of questions, but I would say what's maybe like the most interesting aspect of crypto unicorns that you're most excited about to kind of kick things off?
I'm kind of fascinated by the interoperable nature of unicorns, right? They have a lot of utility, and we really wanted to, I think when looking at the competitive landscape and some of the challenges that other developers in the space are running into, I sum up a lot of that as too little utility, related to the NFTs, right? If you really only have one game loop, you don't have a lot of levers to continually tune and balance not only a game economy, but just an experience over time. And that can be really tough. So kind of from the get-go, we wanted to create a situation in which there would be lots of different things that you could do with your unicorns. And what we've announced, what I just mentioned, is really just the start of what we plan there. And so for me, it's kind of the infinite possibility that lies ahead of us with a strong foundation around kind of the game loops that I mentioned. So part of it is going to be that discovery phase of figuring out, what is your unicorn good versus bad at, and then the optimization and the choices. Do you trade your unicorn, that may be okay at jousting because you're not super interested in that? You want more of a race team? I mean, there's just, I think, a lot more room within our economy for players to specialize into the things that they find interesting and care about. And that's one of the things that I believe, very strongly is kind of necessary for these economies to kind of sustain over time. So I don't know if that was the answer you're looking for, but I'm just kind of fascinated to see what happens, as the community kind of gets their hands on the game and helps us kind of, pick the direction it heads.
I'm always interested when the word utility, your brought up. Do you want to jump in, ZG?
I was just curious, with the depth of the game having these 3 different options to participate, is there a certain timeline you're looking to bring them to market with, what's first for us? Are we going to be jousting, right? That's my favorite classic arcade game at the end of the day. So I'm super excited about jousting because that's something we don't have in the space currently. But is there something you guys are bringing hopefully to the floor first?
Yeah, so farming gameplay launches first. That'll be in Q1 of next year. Jousting follows that, then racing, then team RPG. So that's kind of the sequence there. And I'm also super, super pumped about jousting. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Shout out to James Houlihan, one of our game designers, who spent a lot of time, I think, crafting a system that's going to be just a lot of fun to watch. It kind of will play out a little bit like a UFC match, with multiple chances for knockdowns and knockouts and countdowns to see if a unicorn gets up. And I think it'll be a good bit of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
That's really cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So kind of going off of the utility, I did have one question after reading through the white paper, and it was around like third-party utility. Mm-hmm. And I may have misunderstood this, but the way I kind of read it, it sounded like there was like the commercial use description alluded to the ability to leverage crypto unicorns and other platforms. Did I read that correctly? And if so, like, what is the long-term vision behind enabling that type of support?
Yeah. The license tied to every NFT is basically a version of what you see with Bored Ape Yacht Club. I feel like they took the right approach in giving, legitimate ownership of the likeness of the asset if you hold it in your wallet. I think that's really important when we talk about blockchain-based assets, and I think is a better system than some other projects in the space that don't extend that license to players. So initially, that means if you have a unicorn in your wallet and you want to sell T-shirts, we're certainly going to be supportive of that, right? The only thing that we really control from an IP perspective is the brand. And I think that's the right direction to kind of head. As far as third-party utility, I would love for you to be able to take your unicorns into the various metaverses, right? Whether that's Decentraland or the Sandbox. And we are in the early stages of discussing that. Unfortunately, we're not at the phase of the metaverse where, interoperability is just instantaneous and doesn't require dev work. And so we kind of have to evaluate each of those partnerships and figure out what's going to be meaningful. I think what's really interesting for me in terms of third-party utility, and maybe what you're kind of getting out of the white paper, is we're very interested and already in discussions with third-party developers to come and effectively build on our tech and tools and add additional gameplay loops beyond the ones that we have announced. And we'll do that obviously in a very transparent manner with the community, even potentially running game jams to figure out fun loops that then get voted on and, receive grants from the ecosystem fund, for example. And it's one of the advantages that we just have as game developer with our tech and tools and kind of the history behind it, the fact that we've in previous lives kind of licensed this tech out to other developers who have successfully built and shipped games. And so that kind of robust platform is going to really, I think, enable us to work early with partners to further extend the utility of these NFTs. So I view it both as a way to hey, if you want to, I would hope you can take your unicorn into the various metaverses, right? But I also see it as an idea that we can get third parties to come and add to the unicorn gameplay loops without us having to build everything. And I think that fits the, DAO mentality, the decentralized over time roadmap really well.
Yeah, I think that's really cool and something I've brought up to the Zed team myself and said, why not open that back end up so that, if someone wants to build a game in Sandbox that leverages, the horses within their own stable, I don't see why that shouldn't be allowed kind of thing, right? And it seems like the direction you guys are kind of taking towards.
Definitely. And of course, I know nothing about Zedin's backend. I can just, speak from my perspective as a game developer. It's really, really hard to have a backend you can open up that's going to allow other people to build on top of it. It's one of just the advantages of our history as a studio and the amount of time that we've spent, building our technical platform. And so I think there are things that are going to be a little bit easier for us to do than developers that, even if they started several years ago, are going to, struggle with. It's the same thing like opening up APIs and documentation to third parties, right? I mean, you have to kind of have your shit together to do so. And it's really just a factor of the amount of time that we've kind of spent with our own platform and, building our tools to the point that we have. Another thing too is obviously these are blockchain assets, right? Anyone in the world could build a game loop completely outside of our system and let people leverage these assets. And I would certainly be excited by that. I think there's reason for them to partner and work with us such that we can include them in the economy. And I think that drives further utility and potentially value to the fungible token assets as well as the non-fungible token assets, and it's kind of a win-win. But then again, I'd be pretty pumped if somebody wanted to build a completely separate ecosystem. I just think there's potentially ways to win together, and that's going to be kind of my approach with partnerships.
So Stitchy's kind of touched on economics. I had another question that kind of, I guess, will flow into this a little bit. Like just in general, what does the end game look like for this community-owned game economics that gets touched on throughout the white paper? And I guess more specifically, like how do you plan to maintain like a proper level of supply and demand as like game adoption continues to grow?
Yeah, I mean it's a complicated question, and I don't think anyone to date has proven that you can have a multi-year sustainable game economy simply because there are very few examples that have done so to date. And the way I kind of look at it is the only way these things survive long-term is building a very robust community that sticks around for the long term. And so you've heard me say a lot of things about utility and how we plan to start with a large amount of it and expand on that over time. And I think, in doing so, we're set up to sustain a lot longer than many of the projects that I currently see in the space. A really specific example is the idea that the farm simulation gives us something really important in that the farm doesn't care about the stats of a unicorn, right? And so as the generative economy grows, as more unicorns are produced, in a lot of other games, you get this problem where a huge subset of the NFTs, are just not useful in the gameplay loops. And we can't avoid that because there will be bloodlines that end up, with higher stats and things of that nature. But the farm sim gives us a constant sink for effectively low stat unicorns that I think many of the projects in the space currently lack. And, that will, it's effectively like a staking mechanism, right? So a huge chunk of the lower stat unicorns I expect to be put to work in the farm sim. And the farm sim is a hungry beast, right? Over time, as you continue to expand the capacity of your farm, your stables, your productive output, your workshop, every time you need to craft an item, a unicorn is needed. Every time you're harvesting and you want to maximize the productive output of that crop, you need to assign a unicorn to manage that. You need to be sending unicorns out on gathering missions. And so there's plenty of utility as far as the low stat unicorns are concerned. We have 1 million total plots of land over time. And so a huge chunk of the overall, set of breeded unicorns will be kind of toiling on the farm. And then it's going to be the cream kind of rises to the top, and the best and brightest, if you will, of the unicorn herd are going to go into the battle loops. And on that front, it is certainly on us to continue to add more and more loops over time. It's almost like I kind of had this thought today, like, if you look at an IP like Mario, right, where it started and where it's at today, right? There's basically a Mario game loop for everything, whether it's fishing or, match 3 or racing or platforming or whatever, right? And that's, of course, a grand vision, but it is how I think about growing the crypto unicorns IP over time, right? I want these unicorns doing all kinds of things, right? Endless runners and even simpler kind of IO games. And each one of those provides a new use that attracts potentially a new player, which continues to keep things growing over time. And I think will lead to more sustainability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you guys are bringing in that aspect of, right, it's something that we're looking in with Zed right now. What do we do with these bad horses? There's always going to be that experimentation and that discovery process of breeding. But in that process, there's going to be a lot of bad horses and potentially unicorns made. And I think it's important that you guys are already addressing that up front and putting that as your priority as, your first rollout. With that being said, I'm just kind of curious about the tokenomics of how you guys are going to run the liquidity pool. Are you going to be leveraging, Uniswap, or are we going to be able to buy in with ETH or any other type of cryptocurrency? Can you speak to that, or is that something maybe I understand with regulations and everything that there are some steps that, have to be taken before you can say for sure, but I was kind of curious of what you can speak to.
Yeah, I can definitely cover some of that. Obviously, we are finalizing all of our public IDO plans at this time. And so, I had a call with our crypto kind of focused council earlier today, as a matter of fact, to discuss this. The TLDR, to answer your question, is yes, you are going to be able, after the public IDO, to purchase this token on various decentralized exchanges on Polygon. And so likely SushiSwap, QuickSwap, we might be using some balancer pools. All of that is a little TBD, but you're absolutely going to be able to purchase the Rainbow token, which is our governance token, and Unicorn Milk, which is the utility token, the breeding currency, at least is its initial use. And those will all be tradable on decentralized exchanges initially.
That's awesome, right? QuickSwap, great site. And if you want introductions to the Umbria team, they've actually built a bridge between Polygon and Ethereum that is instant and usually less than $5 in transaction fees, and it's something that you can easily add your token to, I'm sure.
It's funny you bring that up. I've wanted an intro. So if you could do that after this, sir, I'd appreciate it. Because, I think the sleekness of being able to integrate that within our experience is just an awesome idea. And I think would be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, I can run intros after this for sure.
Awesome. Look at that.
Boom.
Nice.
Thank you, sir.
So kind of maybe one last question on tokenomics before we move on to other topics is, I noticed in the white paper there, I think it was mentioned that you'll be able to stake Rainbow or the Rainbow token. And I was curious for like the Unimilk, Unicorn Milk or will you be able to stake that as well? And is there any more differences between the Rainbow and the Unimilk token that other than what you've covered so far?
Yeah, so the Rainbow token is going to be the only asset you can stake. It is the governance token. It will be the mechanism by which we vote on, deployment of the treasury, direction of the game, etc. And Unicorn Milk is very much a mintable, burnable utility token, which initially has the use around breeding, and there are and will be several additional use cases introduced over the course of next year. But yeah, Unicorn Milk is very much a utility token, similar to SLP and other utility tokens that you've seen in other games, where Rainbow token represents our governance token.
So it'll be just the Unicorn Milk for breeding, like compared to Axie, who actually uses like the Axis and the Axis and the SLP for breeding?
There is a Rainbow token portion tied to breeding as well.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that helps with demand a little bit, or the demand side.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. ZG, Eric, do y'all have any questions? I'm gonna keep.
No,
I can keep going, but go ahead.
I got a comment. So I'm just checking out the white paper and stuff. It does give me a lot of that Axie Infinity feel, and my question is really, if I were to look at this versus looking at Axie, I'm familiar with Axie Infinity, and
Sure.
What's the main difference? What would make me want to jump and take my money from Axie Infinity and put it into crypto unicorns?
I guess my first question to you is, as a participant in the Axie economy, how many of the Axies that you currently own have utility, in that they're actually good enough to compete in the seasonal PvP meta?
Honestly, I have two teams that are competitive out of the 40, maybe about 43 teams I have now.
Okay.
So when I approach a project like Axie, what I look at is the rate of returns and basically how much ROI I'm able to get from the Axies. Seasonally, every season the stats or the Axie get nerfed or gets just basically the dynamics changes. So I realized that good Axies last season may not be good this season, but then again, if you manage the energy level well, for example, I think if we get the account up to say 10 Axies versus 3, you get 40 energy versus 20, and so for me, it's a very meticulous control with how much Axies you put in versus how much output you derive from the team. So it's kind of getting it right down to a SLP production per Axie kind of a ratio. This is discounting the breeding and aspect of it, because breeding is a whole different formula in there. So for me, Axie Infinity is like a like a stable. So if you compare, for example, other NFT games where you pump, the asset price goes up, and you kind of flip a couple. Axie Infinity is more sustaining. I would say not so exciting yield, but you have a stable yield time over time. So if I were to look at crypto unicorns, it gives me the similar feel. It does look a lot more refreshing. I mean, I do like how the unicorn look versus how the Axie look, and I do, I love horses, so seeing cute unicorns prancing around it seems to be exciting for me. I like the game modes. I mean, the 3 game modes. Those gives me a little bit more variation to just the PvP style that I see in Axie Infinity. So I do see a few bonuses in that sense. The third point is I do feel that from the economy, it looks like I will be able to derive a bigger chunk or bigger ROI at the get-go, but that's what happened with Axie anyway. But over time, when more people come on, then that ratio or that formula will change. So I'm watching that. But is there something different? Is there is there something is there something magical that I should look at in this consideration?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I asked you about the teams that were competitive, and if I recall, you mentioned basically 2 teams, so 6 out of 40 are productive over the course of a seasonal meta. Like, the reality with unicorns, and let's say you have 40, you're always going to be able to deploy them out to your land and produce berries, boosters, crafted items, and materials, some of which you may use for your own use cases like breeding and evolution. And then the excess, you go into the Rainbow Token Marketplace and sell against that kind of real-time bonding curve, right? And so, you're asking kind of for a magical difference. I would say, well, first off, every single one, your entire stable is out doing things all the time, right? And I think that's going to, create a situation where, like I said, they have more utility day by day than a game that has effectively one loop. Now, the amount of work you may have to put in to, not only manage a farming operation as well as figure out, what jousting tournaments you want to enter, what racing tournaments you want to enter. It's going to be work, but the flip side of that is fun. If you're enjoying the competitive aspect, figuring out what unicorns are good at what, I would think this is going to be a refreshing experience, for people that, are out there on the Zed run or the Axie grind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This sounds interesting. I'm looking at OpenSea right now to see what I can buy now.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that. I'm Darth Schmitty on Discord, so hit us up in there. And if you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer, man.
Absolutely. I'll do that.
Perfect.
So just to kind of piggyback off the Axie question, do you plan on introducing a scholar manager type feature into the game, like I guess technically exists with Axie today? And I guess also, what does the farming look like? How user intensive is it? Is it I just put them in there and they do it without me having to do anything, or is there something that would drive the need for a manager scholar type setup?
So we do plan on a manager scholar system. We're trying to build a delegation mechanism similar to ICE poker on the Decentral Games side, in that you don't have the hassle of having to manage the payment side, in that if the split is 70-30 or 80-20 or whatever it happens to be, it just is, and we're automatically executing that split so that, you're not having to kind of retroactively make payments. And that certainly allows a kind of more trustless system. So you would effectively kind of stake into a delegation contract these assets, and a scholar could effectively go out and manage them. As far as the farm side, I think it depends. If you're managing multiple land plots, right, you can piece together multiple land NFTs to kind of build out an estate. There's adjacency bonuses if you match certain classes of land or rarities of land that kind of allow you to amplify your productive output. And I do think if you're kind of going that route, there's certainly enough for a scholar to kind of manage day to day. It's not something that requires 12 hours a day at the least. But you're going to go through a very typical kind of appointment mechanic of, hey, I'm going to come in, harvest berries, take those, craft them into boosters, plant new seeds, come back a little bit later, harvest again, and kind of rinse and repeat, right? I think the most strategic aspect is going to be managing when to sell and buy into the rainbow token marketplace. I mean, that is kind of this like mini PvP game in the middle of this farm simulation, in that, if I go in and dump a bunch of cloudberries on the market, which take unicorns, you got to use a unicorn to get to market, right? That will create a situation where the price goes down, and anyone trying to buy them is going to be really happy. Anyone that's trying to sell them on that day after me isn't necessarily going to be happy. And I think I'm a huge fan of economy simulation games like Tycoon Nation and Off-World Trading Co. And, given people's fixation on price in the crypto space, I mean, it's hard to avoid. I wanted to put kind of this mini game in the center of the farm economy that will certainly place some advantage on a guild that wants to coordinate, and not just guilds like YGG and GuildFi, which are great partners of ours, but players that want to kind of form up and band together, and that certainly leads into the neighborhood feature, and I think will create a really fun loop for players to engage in. I get the fixation kind of on price and asset and, ROI and all this kind of stuff. And I wanted to lean into that a little bit with tried and true gameplay that is, I think really fun. I mean, you can point to a lot of these economy simulators, especially the real-time PvP ones, and I've always kind of enjoyed them a lot. So for me, it always comes back to generating an experience that at its core is fun, and I think that will allow us to, build something long-term here.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? Especially, right, if you're looking long term, there has to be these options. And something I noticed that you brought up that I think is interesting is, right, Yield Guild Games, YGG. Mm-hmm. And if we look into kind of your guys' investors that with that seed round that you guys have had, they're also investors in YGG and a couple other pretty prominent areas. So do you think that these guilds are going to be a large aspect of crypto unicorns, and is it something you guys are trying to facilitate, or how is it going to go about kind of bringing that aspect to the game?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously good friends with the YGG crew. Gabby was an angel in our round. Obviously, as you mentioned, mutual investors. The GuildFi crew was very early into Discord and has been hugely supportive of the project. So, I mean, part of and I've been working on kind of I almost said a thought piece, and then I don't like that term at all, but I'm working on a Medium blog that kind of goes into my ideas around how to like incept one of these economies and sustain it over time. And you kind of look at the initial 10K set of Genesis eggs and the few thousand holders down there, and that's where it starts, right? People have obviously we put money into the treasury. And there's been a good amount of secondary volume trading. Afterwards, you look at the million land plots, right? And the million land plots is kind of that next tier. And I think you'll probably have a few 100,000 owners of land, and they're the productive, like the engine of our economy, right? And so the land is not only producing new unicorns, of which the high stat ones get picked up to kind of go play the battle loops, right? You're going to have players that come in that just want to play one of the loops, right? And they're going to be looking for the optimal team. And to kind of Eric's point, you may have players that come in, get 5 unicorns for Team RPG, swap out 2 or 3 each season to kind of optimize, and they're just focused on that, right? They're buying boosters and other materials that are being produced off the farm, right? And so it's very interesting, right? The battle loops to me is where you bring in, the millions to tens of millions of players, right? And it all kind of starts and grows from that initial set.
So kind of building off of the adoption thing, like what are you currently seeing as like your barriers to entry, and like what are the current plans to overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, just generally self-custody, is always a daunting thing for, new players. A big thing I did was kind of test with my dear sweet grandmother, who's now in her 70s. Shout out to Graham. And, she's savvy. She's played, computer games like Bejeweled and things, going back to the early 2000s, been a mobile gamer for quite some time. And so, walking her through the process of setting up a MetaMask and kind of being able to see her go through that flow and over time kind of gain confidence, was certainly a good thing. I think naturally wallet infrastructure will continue to improve. And so I think over time that user experience is just going to get better and better. Another barrier that I think is getting mitigated by the day is bridging, right? Deploying to Polygon was a decision we made to ensure that, transactions would be fast and far cheaper than on mainnet, and that has certainly been the case to date. But bridging to Polygon is a barrier in and of itself. And the nice thing is between Connect and Hop Protocol and, even things like Dharma, which are doing fiat directly to Polygon. I mean, I've just been amazed in the last 60 days at the number of kind of integrations and new bridges. And the one ZG is going to intro me to. I mean, that stuff, those barriers all seem to be coming down rather quickly. And then you finally get to the point where it's just like cost, right? And yes, a Genesis egg is expensive. A Genesis unicorn is expensive. At the end of the day, they are the genesis of the entire unicorn economy. And people with two are going to be first to breeding, first to be able to build out their farms, first to find the hidden classes, first to find high stat unicorns, and trade them with players looking to compete in the battle loops or be competitive in the battle loops themselves, right? And the point being is with each generation, you're getting more and more and more unicorns. Obviously, we have a land loop that's very hungry and will kind of always be very hungry for unicorns. And then as long as we have enough battle loops to deploy the kind of higher stat unicorns to, we have the chance to build something sustainable. And it's really always been my dream that over time, the cost barrier does come down. Now, if you've got a piece of mythic land, if you've got a piece of rare land, or even a piece of common land that you've ground out and progressed the buildings on, and, there's certainly going to be value in that relative to somebody picking up a fresh piece of common land, a year into the game, right? They're just not going to have, they're starting at level 1 buildings, right? You're at level 20, you have more production and things of that nature. And so I guess the point I'm just trying to make is, I believe with the current state of the market and just the crypto space in general, you kind of have to start on the upper end and play a little bit of the whale game to incept the initial economy. And then as you grow it over time, you want more and more players entering it. And to do so, you need to kind of lower that economic barrier. And it kind of naturally happens as you go from 10,000 to 100,000 to 1 million unicorns to 10 million to even more. And how you keep it from not collapsing is making sure that the utility holds over time. And I think we'll be introducing a lot of mechanisms that haven't been discussed yet that will create deflationary pressure on both the non-fungible and fungible assets. And I think we have a lot of levers that will keep things on the rails for the long term.
Awesome. Is there a target demographic? I'm sensing the answer is no, but do you have one in mind right now? And are there going to be also, I guess as a follow-up, are there going to be any age restrictions around playing the game?
We'll absolutely follow COPA compliance and, the global kind of regulations to the best of our abilities. So I guess that would be 13 plus. in terms of playing the game. As far as the target demographic, I mean, my background, a lot of the games that I built, kind of at my second game company I joined, they're Forex strategy. They were like really narrow, mostly targeting males, 30 to say 50, kind of strategy war games, right? And our team had been kind of building in that genre for many years. And one of the refreshing things about Crypto Unicorns, and really something that we tried to do very intentionally, was broaden the IP. And so I wanted these unicorns to appeal both to men and women, and to people of kind of all age groups. And I think we've already proven that out. I mean, just seeing, some of the live streams was just such an incredible moment of, families hatching eggs together and things of that, nature. It's been cool to see. And I think we're clearly on to an IP that, that resonates with people. I think the challenge is we are very much going for a crypto native audience. You have games like Fate and Arena that I'm looking at very closely, which are kind of taking the opposite approach. They're like, hey, we're going to stay in kind of mobile, free to play, try and go a lot broader, and kind of connect that audience into a crypto economy. And we're kind of taking the opposite bet. I don't know which one is right, and they both could absolutely work out in the end. But as someone personally who's been pretty immersed in the crypto space since 2017, I look at the audience, of the couple million MetaMask wallets that are really doing the majority of NFT trading right now, and I'm like, that's the starting audience. And I just don't think we could ask for a better, seed to a larger audience, right? I mean, these are the evangelists, right? And we kind of all have been for many years to really push crypto to where it is today. So anyway, that's kind of a roundabout way of saying that, we wanted the IP to be broad and friendly to everyone. But we did take an approach of going kind of crypto native and taking the bet that wallet experience and just more and more people will, I believe, get onboarded into crypto in the next 5 years. And I hope that Crypto Unicorns is a well-known brand at that point, one of the first games everybody wants to try.
I will say my daughter had an absolute blast with the unicorn egg opening.
I know that brought me a lot of joy to see that. That was, and shout out to Matthew Holter, who had worked with our art team to get that egg image to kind of crack like it did. And I thought it was cool. That was very cool to see. And certainly brought me a lot of joy after many, many weeks of crunch.
I need to get MJ to help me fix all my streaming and recording stuff, because I screwed up a good bit of the video with some audio issues that I'm still trying to edit out. But yeah, even that slight little highlight that I threw out there it was fun. So we had a great time with that.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear.
Eric, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a comment to basically, I think, what the target audience and stuff. So I was just listening to what was shared, and I think and I kind of made a comment to MJ as well on the side, saying that it kind of followed this. I think this game, Crypto Unicorns, is kind of following a very traditional model as what we've seen in Axie Infinity, as with Zrun. I think when you talk about that population explosion and how that new money will come in and basically grow the game, and everyone gets a share of the rewards in that sense. It follows a very similar model. I think what's worth looking at, and I'm starting to see that. We see this happening in Decentraland, and as well as I think in Sandbox and so on and so forth. With they're trying to build up this metaverse-like infrastructure, and I think Crypto Unicorns, if I'm just letting my imagination run wild, I'm looking at roadmaps where you have tribes and neighborhoods. I think this is going to be a possibility, and the other addressable market that we can actually start looking at would be the creators for game assets. I think opening up, and we're starting to see this with a little bit with Zed, but I don't think it's going to be open up yet. But with Riot Racers, for example, we're looking at getting paint shops, for example, where users or players can actually create their own content, add their own flair, their own style. And so with that, monetization will come in, and there will be a stronger and deeper level of engagement. So I think if I were to offer up a suggestion for crypto unicorns, is really to look at that level of user creation, or that market, and basically allow for creators to actually come on and basically create. A good maybe Web2 kind of example would be Roblox, where Roblox started with that, just a very simple model, but allowing the creators to come in to create games, variation of the games, and as well as creating in-game assets to sell on store. I mean, those are not NFTs, but that basically led to an explosion with kids coming on board, and parents paying, putting their credit cards in and just paying, and operating the game is going to be huge. All right.
Yeah. I think that's a great suggestion. We have a lot of plans with like decorations and all kinds of things that will help you, not only make the land gameplay kind of your own and how you want to kind of customize and create. And I think that's a great potential area to insert some UGC. Which, to your point, draws a larger and larger audience, not only of creators, but of people that are going to be purchasing kind of the content that they're building for the game. And so, yeah, I definitely think that's interesting. And it's core critical to ensuring that the game long-term, the game economy long-term remains sustainable, is growing to a wider audience over time. So no, I appreciate the suggestion. I think it's a good one.
I'll just add on a point to that. I think when we look at marketing and such, we look at the addressable market, and we look at the we look at who's buying and whatsoever. So in this case, right, when I look at the games that my daughter play, for example, Roblox, and one of the games she makes me play with her is this game called Adopt Me, and I have to pretend to be the kid where she's the adult. We have, like, for example, Christmas, or we have the New Year, we have Halloween. She will host like party, and she'll do up the house and so on and so forth, and she'll make me kind of like play with her. She'll share this with her friends and so on and so forth. So I do see that that becomes an opportunity. I mean, like you say, decorations and so on and so forth. The ability to kind of like build that into a game, and even for her to loan out her NFTs for friends in the class to come on, join in the fun, and even be able to have a broadcast feature or even a recording feature to basically record a clip where she can show off later. So I think those are going to be options that will be pretty interesting to look at. All right, well, back to you.
Yeah, definitely. Love the suggestions.
So I do want to open up the floor in case anybody wants to come up and ask questions. I know we're getting close to an hour, and I try to follow ZG's good rule of keeping things at an hour so they don't go too long. But I do have one last question, selfishly. The land sale's coming up, I think next week, almost a week from today, if I'm correct. With when the land sale happens, when you buy land, can anybody connect two pieces of land to be neighbors? So, for example, if me and ZG wanted to be neighbors, do we have to buy two pieces of land that are, like, is there not physical location, but is there like a specific location for each piece of land to where they have to already be next to each other, or can any pieces of land be connected to make a neighborhood?
So pieces of land can be connected arbitrarily into their own neighborhoods. That was actually a design decision that I made that I feel pretty strongly about. I know Sandbox, Decentraland, Axie have kind of fixed coordinate placement of land on kind of these fixed world maps. We've spent a lot of time as game designers building kind of MMO maps, and it's very difficult to design a map before you really understand player behavior. So at the launch of the game, you will be able to piece together up to 9 land tiles in your own little, like, solo neighborhood, if you will. And then with the launch of the neighborhoods feature, that's when you guys can begin to piece your lands together. And the idea there is, I kind of want people to build their own maps, which also gives us a lot of flexibility. If you think about building a kind of shared map with, your friends or guild mates, if you will. And then us launching an event where you bring your shard into that event and participate in it. It just gives us a ton of flexibility over time to, create things that are fresh and exciting for the community. But yeah, to answer your questions, when the Neighborhoods feature launches, you'll be able to piece land together with, anyone that you please. Prior to that, and at the launch of the game, you can piece together land kind of in your own solo neighborhood, if you will.
Awesome. So, CoinHawk, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's a question about the land. It's kind of a little run-on to what you just asked, plus I have a little segue to it. So for the upcoming land sale, let's say you have 6, 8, 10 unicorns. How much land do you need to maximize? Let's say if you have 10 unicorns, do you need 3 per land? Is it more or less? So that's question 1. And then 2, let's just say it's a common plot of land.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that these lands are going to be free floating. Is there any scenario where there's like a city center or capital, or probably an easier way to ask is there any scenario where common land, one versus the other, might have more intrinsic value versus the other? Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess answer your first question. At launch, you can utilize up to 3 unicorns per plot of land. And of course, if you upgrade the stable, et cetera, right, that grows very quickly. So if you wanted to if you had 12 unicorns, right, and you wanted to deploy all of them day 1 to productive use, you would want 4 plots of land. As far as the second question around common land, there is no city center or anything like that. Over time, kind of like I mentioned, we may spin up an event where you bring your shard, maybe it's your solo shard or a shared shard that you've pieced together with your guildmates into this event, and there could be fun things to kind of do with that. As far as common land is concerned, the thing to optimize for there is, if you have moon common land, right, moon unicorns will receive production buffs, while working on that land, right? If you put another piece of common moon land, adjacent to it, right, both of those common moon lands, right, receive a production bonus, right? If you're doing one of the rare land groups that includes, moon and crystal, then at that point, it would buff moon and crystal unicorns, as well as the hidden class star unicorns when those become a thing after we launch breeding with the launch of the game or the farm loop. So I'll pause there. Did that kind of answer your 2 questions, or is there a follow-up?
No, it definitely
Okay.
did. And if you guys don't mind, I do have one more comment that I'd love for you to expand upon that might help for future buyers of unicorns. In the beginning, you're talking about land or unicorns that may not have the best stats, and they'll be definitely utilized on the farm.
Yep.
I think something else that could probably bring value to them that you'd want to talk about is they do have breeding capability, right? So even if they have, say you're trying to buy a bunch of floor unicorns to get into the game,
Mm-hmm.
there is scenarios where you can breed into a higher, a better unicorn per se, as far as numbers. That's accurate, correct? Because that would definitely help, people
Absolutely.
incentivizing to buy the floor.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great point to bring up. And I didn't mention it this time. In previous AMAs, I've kind of leaned into it a little bit more. The value of kind of the Genesis corns, and one of the reasons that they hatched as adults was so that day 1, with the requisite unicorn milk, you're going to be able to kind of kick off that breeding operation. If you have 2 of the same class, you're guaranteed to get that class. You can kind of build out, double down on it. 2 of a different class, obviously you'd have both. But yeah, the chances of producing, birthing a higher stat unicorn are absolutely a part of this. And when you combine breeding boosters and then obviously, so I guess let me start with breeding boosters. Breeding boosters are going to give you the opportunity to optimize the stats, right? It creates a further sink in the game, which is super, super important to the maintenance of the economy. So if you're really going to be serious about breeding and specialize in that, and you're not just looking to kind of, YOLO bet, you're going to want to maximize and sink as many boosters as we allow, when you do a breeding operation, right? And that will absolutely give you the opportunity to, produce a unicorn of higher stats, which of course, beyond the Genesis unicorns will hatch as a baby, and then you get one more shot when you evolve it using effectively the evolution materials. If you maximize that, you're kind of increasing, effectively utilizing evolution boosters is going to give you a chance of rolling a higher quality stat, right? So, the Genesis unicorns are special in that they're the first and will literally generate the entire unicorn nation, right? But you're spot on that the value is not necessarily in the stats you have with the Genesis unicorn. It's bloodline and what you can breed off of it. 100%. That's a really important point. I appreciate you bringing it up.
One thing I'll call out too, since we probably have a good number of Zed people here, is like in the white paper you touch on, or I think there's a limit of, is it 6 breeds per unicorn? So essentially 8? Okay.
Yep.
But there is a mechanism to prevent essentially a flooding of supply of unicorns.
Yes, a higher cost with each generation, right? As the breed points get consumed, the cost increases, is certainly one mechanism. I think the thing to reinforce that Zed Run just doesn't have is the farm loop. And I think, for example, there's 30,000 land plots that'll be sold over the course of the 3 phases of the land sale and only 10,000 Genesis corns, right? So there is purposely an imbalance there, such that there's a real strong driver on the initial economy, demand for unicorn milk, demand for rainbow tokens, demand for all of the boosters and evolutionary materials, demand for crafting materials to upgrade. And so, it really should be set up to produce a kind of strong initial economy. And then over time, there will be a need for tens of millions, if not more, unicorns on the farm as you progress. That is literally the planned depth of that loop over time.
Awesome. Well, I think we're a little bit over an hour. I did want to give, if there's any last minute people that want to come up and ask a question, or maybe if CG or MJ or Eric have any last questions.
I got a very important question. So you got me all excited. I want in. I want to buy. I want to mint something. I look at the next mint. It's the land. It's for land, and there's a white listing. So tell me what I need. So what do I need to do to be in your good books to make sure I'll be able to mint something?
I'll let Brian answer this one. He's the keeper of the keys on the white list and the plans there, along with, I don't know if Nanessa is here, but Brian can certainly answer it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Please join our Discord. And in our Discord, we're actually doing, I believe, daily events to join our whitelist. So our land sale is going to be whitelist only at first, and we're expecting it to go pretty quickly. So certainly would advise to get on our whitelist and then be ready on the date and time of our launch of our land sale mint.
Okay,
I will say. Oh, go ahead.
I'm on a Discord. Sorry. So I'm just gonna ask this question. I'm just gonna ask a little bit more here because I'm on a Discord. I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, I need to do activity. So where do I look out for it? Do I look out for it in general? Do I go somewhere and what are the hoops I need to jump through to make sure this?
Yes. So to be the most up to date, please turn on notifications for our announcements channel. And so we'll be broadcasting there. Hey, we're doing unicorn hours, and then here's the activity. So we are intentionally keeping it to relatively short time periods to try and spread it out over time and give a lot of people opportunities to join our whitelist.
Absolutely.
I will say too that I love and hate the limit on the mints. Mostly because I want to mint more than one Mystic and a few rares, but I love that you did that so that there's going to be a broader opportunity for people to get in. So
definitely, the focus there is certainly on wider distribution. I'm very happy with the distribution of the Genesis eggs, and the idea too is if you really want to, you absolutely can participate in all three phases. Right, the first begins next Wednesday on the 15th at 3 p.m. Pacific time. The second will be January 15th, and the final one will be February 1st. So anyway, plenty of opportunity to pick your land strategy and go from there.
Awesome. Any other questions?
None for me. I appreciate you guys taking the time to let us grill you a little bit, share more about the product, and I'm excited about what's coming next. Hopefully we can speak again soon.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for having us. Always happy to talk to members of the community and hopefully many future members of the community. We'll see everyone in Discord. Like I said, I'm Darth Schmitty. Feel free to hit me up with questions, comments, and concerns.
Okay, thank you guys for joining. This was great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cheers, everybody.
Right.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.